application or extension of LatCrit tools and concepts to new social or legal terrains, we have reassembled and cohered the legacies that we inherited into a distinctive model of critical outsider jurisprudence. This distinctive model is organized around democratic and egalitarian conceptions and practices. And thus, we may usefully refer to what we do as a form of outsider academic democracy. However, as with everything else that we do, we did not invent democratic knowledge production. As with everything else that we do, we have striven to learn from past efforts, including those of SALT, Law and Society, in order to mix and match the best from each, and then adding our own distinctive elements. Thus, the LatCrit version of democratic knowledge production stands in relative contrast to the imperial tradition of Langdellian practices or the vanguardist experiments of critical legal studies. And I borrowed that terminology, imperial from Richard Delgado, vanguardist from Angela Harris, to describe some of the models of legal knowledge production that produced the jurisprudential legacies that we have inherited, reassembled, and now aim to make sharper and more potent. The LatCrit model of outsider democracy departs from imperial or vanguardist approaches in a number of significant ways, including the following. From the very beginning, we have adopted the practice of principled inclusivity as a baseline norm. This conception of principled inclusivity informs and influences all our collaborations in several key respects. LatCrit theory, LatCrit venues, LatCrit projects, the LatCrit enterprise is not just simply open, though it is. It is rather open in a very theorized and targeted way. We pursue, in affirmative terms, a programmatic development of the conditions that enable and empower multidimensional and anti-essentialist analysis. We make sure to gather in the room not only people whose demographics embody difference, but people whose intellectual agendas and backgrounds can give substance to the notion of difference. And to do so, we invented certain programmatic practices that are now routines. For example, the concept of rotating the center of inquiry, such that we do not always focus on what we might regard as conventional or essentialized versions of the Latino condition. We also don't do surgical strikes in the process of knowledge production. We do not simply dip into new terrains in a one-shot basis. Rather, we develop what we call streams of programming so that we can ensure that as a community we learn not only about the topic, but from each other as we learn about the topic. And so this development of an application of the norm of principled inclusivity has taken us over the years from a main event or a safe space to a portfolio of projects or a safe zone in which various individuals can do their work, not always in a plenary session, not always in lockstep fashion, rather in decentralized, democratic, and flexible ways. This big tent approach and egalitarian ethos in turn has placed a premium on community building, coalition building, and institution building. But these three mutually reinforcing practices are not separate or apart from knowledge production. On the contrary, They are integral to knowledge production. These three mutually reinforcing practices, community building, coalition building, institution building, is an effort to recognize our own humanity and its relationship to the work that we do and the goals that we pursue. In the LatCrit 12 afterword, Margaret Montoya and I summarized this idea thusly. Democratic knowledge production scrambles and synthesizes in varied ways differing aspects of the imperial and vanguard models. But democratic experiments do not aim or tend to create or control about LatCrit as such. In my view, LatCrit is best regarded as an effort to construct an underground resistance network. A network that is agile and nimble, as all undergrounds must be, yet principled, which is the difference oftentimes between the underground and the dominant power structure. We have worked together in many different capacities to create a viable, self-sustaining, and self-correcting alternative to business as usual in legal academia in the US, certainly, but also beyond. It is an effort that reflects the demands that we place on society and on academia itself. We might view this effort as an alternative that is constructing an enduring counter-tradition of anti-subordination academic activism based on a self-critical application of critical theory not only to society at large, and not only to academia as a whole, but also to ourselves and to all that we undertake. Our aim, thus, is to create a virtual home for the incubation of critical communities, discourses, and actions anchored to the very principles that we profess. And that, though not the answer to many pending questions, certainly is no small feat in a time of backlash and retrenchment. Thank you. I'm happy to chat. I don't know who's responsible for the time now, but
Nobody up for questions for about 2 minutes or so. We use the microphone thing to record. Are we recording this part for posterity's sake? Yes, we are going to record it for posterity's sake.
oh.